Now, for this next story, in order for it to make sense, you have to dig into your memory bank a little bit and remember what the news was like back in the years 2020, 2021, and leading into the year 2022. It was basically, if you remember, wall-to-wall COVID pandemic coverage. You had reporters sitting by themselves in their homes, still wearing masks. You had people getting castigated for being alone by themselves on the beach. And you had global media outlets like CNN, as one example, who were posting graphics at the bottom of their screen for the entirety of the day, showing you the COVID death count. And so keep that in mind as I tell you what just took place over in Europe. 2 weeks ago, a husband and wife couple were sentenced to prison because they kept their children trapped indoors, living in squalid conditions for almost 4 years, because the couple was afraid of either them or their kids catching COVID. From December of 2021 up until April of 2025, when they were finally rescued, you had the 3 kids not be allowed to leave the house, which is already by itself bad enough. But the state of the house that they were trapped in was allegedly so bad, according to the police who were there on site, that, as just one example, they had one room that was dedicated to just piling up used, dirty diapers. This isolation, as you would imagine, it left the kids with significant mental and physical disorders. They are now, very sadly, according to prosecutors, having difficulty walking. They have a hunchback posture. They have bladder and bowel control issues because they were using diapers well beyond the years that they should be. They have perpetually irritated skin. And just in general, having missed 4 years of childhood, they have delayed development. And right at the outset, to dispel any ideas that these kids were themselves into this whole state of affairs, according to the police officers who actually liberated these children, they said that after being rescued, one of the kids, he was so overcome with emotion that he dropped down to the ground in order to touch the grass in amazement. Now, the parents in question are as follows. You had 53-year-old Christian Steffen. He is a German national, and he worked as a tech recruiter. And you had his wife, 48-year-old Melissa Steffen. She is an American-born but naturalized German citizen. And what happened, according to court records, is that this couple was actually living with their kids over in Germany when the pandemic began. However, because the German government would not let them homeschool their own kids, they decided in the year 2021 to take advantage of the freedom of movement within the EU, and they took their family and moved over to Spain. They rented a villa in a small village in the northwest part of the country called Oviedo. And after moving there, here's what Spanish prosecutors said happened. Quote, "The parents locked the minors up inside their home and isolated them completely from the rest of the world, denying them contact with other people, both physically and through other forms of communication." Which to me is more surprising than anything, because you can kind of understand the idea of not letting the kids physically interact with other humans. If you are a hypochondriac, that makes sense. But not letting the kids even communicate with the outside world is really next level stuff. The prosecutors, they also added that, quote, "The children didn't even know their relatives or any other people that weren't their parents. They never went outside, not even to the garden of their home for almost 4 years because of the unfounded fear the accused had, and they had instilled in their children that they might be infected with something." All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment. If you've watched our program, Facts Matter, then you know that we focus on one thing, which is the facts. Not speculation, not narratives, just what the data shows. And right now, the data globally is pointing in a direction people should really be paying attention to, which is the fact that global conflicts are fueling market uncertainty. That's why I believe in owning something real, something physical, something that the government can't just inflate away, which is physical gold and physical silver from today's sponsor, which is American Hartford Gold, the company that I trust and who I've been personally buying from for many years now. These are tangible assets. They're not tied to policy decisions or shifting narratives. Gold has held its value for thousands of years through inflation, currency changes, the rise and fall of empires, as well as general global instability. In a certain sense, gold actually thrives in periods of global instability. And American Hartford Gold is a good company. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, thousands of 5-star reviews. They can deliver your gold and your silver directly to your doorstep, or they can help you set up a gold IRA if you're trying to diversify your retirement. And right now, when you call and mention my name, Roman, you can get up to $20,000 in free silver with your first qualifying purchase. So give them a call, 866-242-2352, or just text Roman to 65532. That's again, 866-242-2352, or text Roman to 65532. I'll also throw all their details. You'll be able to find them down in the description box below. Now, the names and identities of the 3 kids in question have understandably not been released to the public. But what we do know is that the kids, they included one 10-year-old as well as 2 8-year-old twins. And if you do the back of the envelope math, those twins, they were confined in that house starting at the age of 4, and the other 10-year-old was confined there starting at the age of 6. And they were apparently homeschooled during this period of time. But the prosecutors noted that the 8-year-olds were still unable to read or write, which just makes you wonder what they were even doing inside of the house for 24 hours a day for 4 full years. The kids, they had also not seen a doctor since the year 2019, which again is also bad to begin with, but it gets even more egregious when you learn about the squalid living conditions inside of that home. Quote, "There was animal excrement all over the kitchen floor and counters, while a guest bedroom had become a dumping ground for the children's used nappies." Nappies, by the way, are the British way of referring to diapers, meaning they had an entire room dedicated to piling up used, filthy diapers. The description continues, quote, "Officials said the children faced problems with bladder and bowel control, as well as bowed legs caused by years of being kept in tiny beds too small for their growing bodies. Investigators found disturbing scrawls created by the children on the inside of their cots, showing monsters with jagged teeth in red ink." Additionally, the prosecutors said that, quote, "As a result of these events, the children suffer from social dystocia, which will delay their incorporation into social relationships appropriate for their age. Furthermore, the children also had problems with bladder and bowel control caused by the prolonged and improper use of nappies." Now, in terms of how this whole sordid state of affairs was discovered, it was actually just a single nosy neighbor, a local economics professor named Sylvia Gomez Anson. She lived nearby this villa, and she happened to notice that, for one, she could hear the sound of kids' voices coming from inside the house, but she never visually saw any kids. And secondly, she also noticed that the supermarket deliveries that the house was receiving contained diapers. However, the only thing she ever actually saw was a man wearing a face mask who would go up to the gate, receive the groceries, and then scurry back inside. And so this professor, she became suspicious, and she started to keep relatively detailed notes of what was happening. She compiled records of when the deliveries were made, the sounds that she was hearing, as well as even the slight movement of the blinds and the curtains that were being made inside the house. And after making these records, she presented them to the local police, who launched their own investigation, and after 2 weeks, they raided the property. Now, funny enough, when they came to the door in April of 2025, the man asked the police to put on their face masks in order to not spread COVID. Now, the kids were liberated. The parents then were arrested, and during the trial, the parents basically insisted that they acted in the best interest of their children. They said that they had caught COVID once before, and they decided to self-isolate and homeschool their kids because they developed an insurmountable fear of getting sick once again. And then from a legal perspective, the lawyers representing the couple, they said that, for one, this was a voluntary isolation. Secondly, that the kids were not being unlawfully detained. And that thirdly, the parents had taken a series of probably wrong, but not criminal decisions. However, that defense didn't really hold. The husband and wife, they were both sentenced to 28-month-long prison sentences after being found guilty of habitual psychological violence within the family environment. On top of that, they were also given separate 6-month sentences each for the crime of family abandonment. Furthermore, besides just getting sent to prison, the parents have also been stripped of their custody and parental rights. They have been banned from going within 300 meters of their kids up until their age 18, and they've been ordered to pay each child, each one of the 3 kids, a compensation of $35,000 apiece. The couple is currently sitting behind bars, while the kids are either they're still in social care or they've been taken by their grandparents. I wasn't able to figure out that part of the story in terms of like what's happening right now, but either the grandparents were able to come pick them up or they're in social custody in the country of Spain. A couple of other interesting tidbits in the story. After the case came to light, it really caused a shockwave in the village where they were living, which, for your reference, only had a population of something like 200 people. And according to local news reports, The couple left the house so infrequently that some of the neighbors actually assumed that that house was abandoned. However, there was an interesting quote from one of the other neighbors who told the Daily Mail newspaper in the UK that, quote, "I once saw the mother walking down the road in a summer dress and flip-flops in the middle of winter. They were not okay in the head. I think it happened to a lot of people during COVID. The lockdowns and everything really affected some people." Which, in terms of this case, might be a bit of an understatement. And so there you have it, a really tragic case. And personally, I just wish the best for those 3 kids moving forward. It must not be easy, not only to have lived through that, but also to move on in life without your parents. But I guess that's the situation they find themselves in. If you want to read any of the court docs from this particular case to get a bit more color on what was actually happening inside that house, I will throw some links to my research notes down in the description box below. And then lastly, 2 things. Firstly, I would really love to know your thoughts here, and I'd love to pose a question to you. Is it really appropriate to send these parents to jail? Because on the one hand, obviously what they did was abusive. It was abusive to their 3 kids. But on the other hand, if those parents were not in their right minds and they were really just hypochondriacs, subjectively, they believed that COVID made the world so dangerous for both themselves and their kids that the only way to keep them safe and sound would be to keep them at home. And so technically, from a very subjective perspective, maybe the kids were being good parents in their own minds. I mean, you should obviously still remove the kids from that sort of environment, but wouldn't sending them to a psychiatric facility be more appropriate? Because again, subjectively, they at least believe that they were doing the right thing and being good parents. Just a thought. And I'd love to know your thoughts too. Do you agree with that? Or do you believe that they need to be sent to prison as basically a deterrent to other hypochondriac parents so that this doesn't happen again in the future? But if you believe that, I mean, if somebody's really a hypochondriac, will knowing about this story and what happened to those parents stop them from doing that in the future? I don't know. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Just the thought that came to mind. If those parents thought that they were doing the best thing for their kids, is it appropriate to send them to jail? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. And then lastly, unrelated topic, over at the Epoch Times, we just published a phenomenal new documentary called Final Hours. It's really a unique film because in it, there are a lot of interviews with people who actually died before, people who were clinically dead. They had no pulse, no breath, not even a flicker of consciousness in their eyes. But then they wound up coming back. They got resuscitated. And the stories they told about their experiences are really something else. They saw worlds, entire worlds filled with light and other beings. They were able to watch their lives unfold outside the constraints of time, every moment in their life, every decision that they made. And what was really interesting is that so many people who are completely unrelated to one another, different parts of the world, never even met each other before, but they had very similar stories to one another when they wound up coming back to life. And it's a great movie. It shines a light on this growing body of actual scientific research of these post-death experiences, which is a growing body of research. And it's very interesting. So if you want to check it out, I would highly recommend it. I'll throw a link to that film. You'll be able to find it right there at the very top of the description box. So check it out. And whether you check it out or not, please also do smash those like and subscribe buttons so the video can reach ever more people via the algorithm. Thank you so much for that. And then, until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed, and most importantly, stay free.